We're now going to look at the WordPress nonce system, and we saw in page post how we send data to an endpoint, custom endpoint that we made using the fetch API and the method post. If we go to our site and we have a look at that form, when we send data to this endpoint, there's no way that the server can know that it definitely came from this page, from this site. Anyone with the knowledge of this endpoint could post data there. The so-called cross-site scripting attack, or give us a spurious link that when we click takes our cookies and goes over to the browser, to the server, and then posts the data. So the WP-Nonce is a little security token, and all it is actually just a number. We can see here, if we use the function WP-X-Nonce and give it a code name, we see that it generates a token that's stored on the server that we send with the form so that it knows it came from us and on our page. And there's some useful information on this page here. So if we have a look at our code for our form on that post nonce, what we can see is as we come down here, we are creating a nonce value, a token, and for it to work, and it's documented here in the Stack Exchange and in the WordPress developer tools here using authentication, this particular link here. If we open that up, the token must have the name WP_REST, and when it's sent, it must be sent with the form field _WP_Nonce. And if we look in here under authentication, and if we expand this out, we can see that it has a WP REST. We can see that the token must be sent with the WP_Nonce parameter, and the action, the field, must be WP_REST. So that's it in the handbook there. So what we do is, we are putting we're creating it with PHP in JavaScript, and I'm going to explain how we can do it in different ways. But whichever way we do it, at some point we have to mix PHP and JavaScript. So for this one variable, I'm creating the token. It gets appended to the form as we did before with the field _WP_Nonce, gets sent to the server. One can also send it under headers, and we're going to have a look at that response when we look at the form output. And if you do so, this is the headers, so that rather than sending it in the form, you send it through headers. You have the choice. So if we go now, and before we do that, let's just have a quick look at the endpoint. When we get to the endpoint, as we saw before with posts, we're sending form this x-WP-Nonce token, and then when we go down into our callback function, we get the data from the parameters, and what we do is we check using WP_verify_nonce that the nonce that was sent matches with the one that the server has saved under this action of WP_REST. Without using those terms given, it won't work when you're logged in because you're having the wrong kind of field name. So this is wired properly, and what it does is it checks and it comes back with 0, 1 or 2. 0 means it fails, 1 means it's less than 12 hours old, 2 means it's less than 24 hours old. These tokens expire after 2 12-hour periods. It's not exactly 24 hours, they're 2 12-hour periods, and on the third one it's invalid. So if you do it right at the end at say 1 minute to midday, that's in the first 12-hour shift of the day, you'll get that, and the second one, so at 1 AM the following day, it wouldn't be valid even though it's only 14 hours old. A little bit tricky to explain, but that's explained nicely here on the pages folder that we've got. If we look at this one here, we can see the sort of the roughly diagram. We've got that link of a very useful little site that explains all these nonces in detail. But when we see the diagram coming through, what we will do is we'll exceed that 12-hour periods. So while that's coming through, we've got that article here. Let's post a form. So test nonce testing. We send it. We're sending it to that endpoint, and our custom return value is success. But notice here, form nonce, that was the nonce that was created, and here it is in the header nonce. And as we see down here in the headers, we can see XWP-Nonce was sent in the headers. So this is just the debug information that I've put on the REST endpoint, and when we go to the home we will be able to see that we've just done that test. And when we come down here we can see now that 12-hour period. What happens is it starts at midnight to midnight on the same day. If you create a token around here, it's only available in 2 green shifts, this one and this one. The third one it isn't. So if you do it at the very start of the day, you'll get 24 hours. If you start late in any one of these 12-hour shifts, say in the middle here, you'd get the 6 hours, the 12 hours, but it wouldn't be valid thereafter. So while it's a maximum of 24 hours, not 24 hours that it's available. So going back to the code, what we can see here is we got the nonce come through. It had to be sent with the parameter _WP-Nonce. We verified it with what was saved in there, and then if it was valid, if it's either a 1 or 2, we can then insert the information into the post. And you can see when I'm sending back my status, I'm sending back all my information that I usually do, and I'm also sending all headers that we can see. And if we go back to the page, let's do it one more time. We moved off that one. Let's have a quick look. Test 2. Put it through. We can see that that was a success message that we got sent back. And here are all the headers variables that are split out. And we can see XWP-Nonce. That token goes through. So let's log out and just see what the new token is. Let's just remember it's 3129. So let's 3129. Let's log out. Let's log in again. Let's go to the site. Let's go to nonce. Test 3. And as you see, we get a totally different token that's stored at the server end that matches up. So if we log out, we get a new token, and after 24 hours or 2 12-hour shift tokens, the next following working day, as it were, or day, the token will no longer be valid. So that's XWP-Nonce. Now what I'm just going to talk about is whether I coded it in here with a PHP inside of JavaScript. Although we will often have JavaScript inside of PHP, they say best practice is not to do this, and it's to use what's called WP localized script. If we go here into our new plugins, we can see that particular folder file. And here it is, and what it's doing is it's attaching, we give it a name, we're attaching basically some objects of the site URL, the nonce which we're creating, and we store it as site object variable, and we'll see that on the page. So basically what's happening is it's attaching it, we've enqueued a script, a test script here for example, but we've named it WP-rest, any name will do. We're linking it, our localized script, to that, although we're not actually using that, but that's the practice of putting it in. But here we're putting in WP-Nonce, and we're going to have a global JavaScript object called site object. Now if we go back into this page and do a Control U and look for C data, if you notice here, let's open this, let's expand this out. What it actually does is it puts this site object, which we see here. What we did is when we're in here, it created a global JavaScript object. I just called it site object, that's the name I gave it, with different properties here. What we can do is we can see it actually here. There it is, the site URL, the nonce, A6, file path. Now this will be on every single page. So for example, if we come back down here, and if we go to AJAX page, do a Control U, do a Control F for C data, we can see it. Scroll down, it's on every single page, and if somebody was aware of this, they may be able to then get access to this by just scraping the page. So why, for one particular variable, I just prefer to actually do it directly in JavaScript here. So when we come back to page nonce, we saw that I created the nonce by embedding PHP in JavaScript. What we must also remember is when we actually look deep down at localized script, when we work our way down and we look at all the different classes in it, in one of the scripts, localize, you actually have this line. I've just commented out so that we can see it better. Script var object name equals encode. And what it's really doing is it's actually making this object, it's actually combining JavaScript and PHP together. So we get the object down here. So you can see the site object equals WP REST. There it's formed. So in some ways one does mix JavaScript and PHP somewhere along the line. So while you can use localized script, some people might say for security, well, if that token is available on every page and is accessible, might it be better to actually do what's maybe not considered good practices of embedding PHP in JavaScript, although it does no harm and does work, and perhaps might be a little bit secure, and it's just one variable that we really only are interested in. So you have the localized script here if you do need to kind of create that so that the site object for JavaScript site object is available all over the site. You have the choice if you want to do it that way, or you can just embed a little bit of PHP in one line of JavaScript. So what we've done is we've seen the REST API, we've seen how we can secure it with the post-nonce, and we've wired it up, and that will enable us to prevent and be greater security with cross-site resource scripting.